so much opportunity even within those quote unquote negative situations. And I've kind of coined the term and tell people all the time, there's so many camouflage opportunities out there, to where if you just really lean into those situations, don't try to ignore them or don't try to hide them, don't sweep them under the rug. You end up tripping over that same rug you swept everything under.
Hey, welcome back to the All Shift podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Anthony Trucks. It'd be weird if it was somebody else, right? But today we got someone who I'm going to say is kindred to me, in a sense of it's an individual who's grown up in we'll call it not the best of ways, right? As a childhood, which my story, it's part of my story also. Progressed through his childhood years, was an athlete, same as me, has progressed past that to do his post-athletic career, where he tied in some of the fitness realm of what he does. He's actually the national director of Nike sports camps. If you know my background, I owned a gym for a lot of years. And on top of that, he's a father. So fatherhood's part of that thing. And he also happens to be a speaker as well. So this person quite literally could be a clone. He's probably a little bit taller, but that's okay. So today we're going to uncover some cool stories and find out how this person has been able to successfully make shift happen in his life through the all shift moments. So without further ado, I'm introducing you to Joel Green. How you doing, man?
Great,
hey man, I'm happy you're here. Seriously, it's always good. Like when I told you before we started, I was like, usually I get a little bit of a rundown of people, but like we're on the fly trying to figure out who you are, and you told me a couple sound bites. I'm like, oh, this guy's like me. It's gonna be a fun one today, and it's cool. And I got 4 episodes I'm recording today, so I'm glad I get to start out one where it feels like I got a good entry, a little good takeoff. But anyways, I start this podcast with one question. You can take it wherever you'd like to take it. Doesn't matter. It's totally up to you. But here is the question. Let's say I'm walking around town. I sit down next to you at some coffee shop. I don't know you. You don't know me. But you turn and start talking to me. Why should I listen to you?
You should listen to me because I've been on both sides of life, man. I've seen things, literally on the bottom. Yeah. I've seen things on the top. I've lived all around the world and have, drawn, I'll say, a very objective viewpoint of life. To where I see things from multiple lenses, various vantage points, to where if I feel like I'm giving advice, it's not coming from a subjective or a biased place. It's coming from a true, honest place of objectivity. And I feel like, it'll make a good amount of sense.
Piece of it. It's having I like that you said that objective perspective, right? Because that means we're talking about facts, not the, subjective, what I think about things from, skewed perspective. Curiosity, man. Where have you lived? I like when I hear people say I lived all over the world. I'm like, where? Like, you crossed the pond?
What? Absolutely. I mean, home. I grew up in Philly, Philadelphia. Nice. So I'm a Philadelphia guy. But beyond that, playing professionally over in Limerick, Ireland. Played over in Ireland for a little bit. Played in Malaga, Spain. Nice. Lived on the coast over there. Maracaibo, Venezuela.
That's cool.
Just different places, man. Made my rounds, met a lot of different people, experienced different cultures.
That's cool, man. What's Ireland like? Did you ever go to the Guinness hole, I guess, to get the big place there that makes the brew?
Yeah, that's the first thing, man. We go. I play a game. We won a game, a big game at that. And first thing my teammates did was took me out and took me to this bar. Is 3 on a block over there. It's 3 little block. Every block you go, there's bound to be 3 or 4 bars, little pubs as they call them, everywhere. And it's Guinness. It's every type of Guinness you'll see. And it's an experience.
It was really cool. For some reason, I don't know. I never drank much. And I still don't drink much. But when I do, somehow I got the taste for like a Guinness, man. People think I'm crazy, but it's good to me. So let's do this. Let's run this back through. Let's call it the Reader's Digest version, right? Let's get the story, because I really want to unpack the soul of who you are. Because obviously it's one thing to say, like, I've had experience, I've traveled the world, but we don't know what those experiences are, what the goal of it is. So let's kind of unpack, if you don't mind, taking us back to the Philly days.
Okay. I mean, Philly for me, again, I love where I'm from, man. I don't know if you know anybody from Philly, but we always talk about where we're from. Like, you got Will Smith, he puts Philly on everything. Kevin Hart, he talks about everything is Philly. we're super proud of where we come from. And I'm the same way. I grew up in really humble conditions, man, in North Philly to be exact. Loved it, but I grew up in an abandoned house. You know what I mean? It was super humble. Just growing up, having our parents bring home these black trash bags full of clothes, and we called them new clothes because they were donated to donated to us from the church. And
Yeah.
I loved it though. Getting that new Mickey Mouse sweatshirt and things like that. And I didn't know that this
Poverty. Yeah.
was not the norm. It was just my way of life. My brothers and sisters having to go with empty pots and pans to our
Mhm.
neighbors to get hot water to bring them back and put them on top of the
Yeah.
kerosene heater to keep them hot. Like doing things like that. And this during the crack era of the early '90s, late '80s. It was just I saw things that I normally wouldn't
Yeah.
I wouldn't wish on anybody to see. 6 years old, I was 10 feet away from a shooting. There was nobody else
Yeah.
there outside the kid that got shot. I had a knife pulled out on me,
Yeah.
all before the age of 10. So going through things like that, man, that was my upbringing, but it helped me to I just
Yeah.
say develop a callus, man. I developed a callus to
Mhm.
difficulty early because of those experiences. Years later, losing my brother
Yeah.
tragically, one of my brothers, I just difficulty it don't
Yeah.
really mean anything to me anymore. I just see it as a
Next
midpoint
point.
to get to an
You ever
end.
heard that
To be
statement, "A
honest with you,
smooth sea makes not a skilled sailor"? Yeah, I got a
I
painting
love
up
that.
on
I
my
love
wall
that
here. I
quote.
literally
Absolutely.
got that. It says, "Smooth
Mhm.
seas never made it." And what I'm hearing
Love
is the
it.
same concept. It's one of those things where, like, and I'm asked this question:
Mhm.
Do you wish any of
Mhm.
it didn't happen? Does any part of you wish like you didn't experience those kind of things?
No, obviously, when it comes to
Yeah,
the death of my brother, that
obviously.
I wish that never happened. I will say, however, the resulting factors after, I don't know if I would have been able to do what I've done in life thus
Yeah.
far without that happening. I'm sure
Mhm.
I would have found a way. But when he passed, another fuel came about that never existed in me. That was, that it was a moment that occurred with me that was like, okay, this is real. Life is real. Um, I had that stuff. I've had a cousin shot and killed when I was about 5 years old, but nobody in my household, tragically died. So when that happened, um, something
Yeah.
happened to me. Something clicked. Things that he was telling me for years I need to do, I finally began doing. You got to get that scholarship. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
cool. You got to do better in school. I started doing better in school. Wish it didn't happen to this day, of course. But all the other things, growing up in an abandoned
Yeah.
house, no, I'm glad that happened. Other things I witnessed, I'm glad those things happened. No regret
What
whatsoever.
are the things you
They made
guys
me who
did,
I
like,
am.
or maybe just you did? Because I mean, it's one thing to say, "I got to get better grades. I got to, get, a better situation." But not everybody has a
Mhm.
support system when they have those troublesome times. Like, where did you lean to be able to get the support to get yourself out of that situation?
Amazing question, man. My parents, I'm a
Mm.
PK, I'm a preacher's kid. So, I grew up in that type of household to where, you had to have faith and, you couldn't say can't and things like that. Like I literally got in trouble for saying
That's good.
can't when I was about 8 years
Yeah.
old, got on punishment. And, I said it, I was having trouble with math homework. I wasn't the biggest math guy as a kid. And, I said, I can't do this. My mom, she's in the kitchen cooking. She said, don't
Yeah.
say that. You can't say that. You're not allowed to say it. She did say
That'd be
can't.
good if she used them.
But,
Yeah.
so I let some time go by, I kept working on it, and I yelled it out the next time. I can't do this. And my dad overheard it too. So they both doubled up on me. It was like, you know, put your homework down and go upstairs to your room. And we would eat fast food every once in a while as a treat, right? We knew if we had fast food for dinner,
Yeah.
it was a treat for the whole family. And there's
Mhm.
a place called Checkers.
I heard of it.
I'm not sure if
Never
you
had it, but
guys
I heard
have
of it.
Checkers, but yeah. So we used to enjoy that as a treat every once in a while. So my dad went out and got some Checkers burgers and
Yeah.
chili dogs and things like that, and bought everyone food back except for me. And he said, "Come sit at the table and watch us eat." I had to watch everybody eat. My brothers were, teasing me, and I was the youngest, four at the
Yeah.
time. So I had to watch everybody eat, all for saying I couldn't do
That's
something. I
crazy. It's
never said
big.
it again in my life. So that
Yeah.
was my support system. That's who I leaned on,
Dude, this
and
this is
I
it's
had to get
eerily
better.
similar to my life in a weird way. We lived down the street from Jack in the Box on a Bryan Avenue in a town called Antioch, which is not the greatest town in the world. But very similar, man. We had this like little like area in the middle of the rooms where you'd come out, and it was a black bags you get from the Goodwill that had like shirts in it, clothes in it. I remember one time I went to school, and the shirt I was wearing was black, and it had like a 80s had like the tie-dye-ish color like little logos. And some girl was so
Absolutely.
wrinkled you couldn't see the logo, and a girl made fun of me. And I remember crying because of it. I was like, damn, okay. So, Doc, I'm hearing this.
Man,
I'm like, this is
that's,
eerie, man. Like, I don't even
man,
know. You know what's even funny? I
that's
have no idea
strange,
how you even
man.
got in this podcast. My team does all of this booking and scheduling. So I'm like, this is just super. Like, they found my clone to come on, but
Yeah,
there's definitely more. So the one thing we didn't do
that's
was we
funny.
didn't play. I didn't play hoops because I'm one of the black guys that God didn't gift with basketball talent. But you decided to kind of take that up. When did you actually start playing basketball, and
That's
how
funny.
much of your childhood played into your ability to be good at it?
Man, I'll be honest. I have a funny story about how I even got into it. My dad, he played growing up. He had a name
Okay.
around the playgrounds in Philly. My older brother, he played, at Overbrook where Will Smith went to school, things like that. So it was already in my
Yeah.
family. You could say it was in my blood. My other brother, he was a boxer. So
Mhm.
we're an athletic family. But I fell in love with it by watching this cheesy '80s movie
Yeah.
called Teen Wolf. I'm
Absolutely.
not
Michael
sure if
J.
you ever
Fox,
saw it with Michael
100%.
J. Fox. Yeah, terrible high school basketball player, but when he turned into this wolf, he could hoop. He could
Yeah.
just your ball out of
Hmm.
control, windmill dunks and everything. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I want to
Yeah.
be like that wolf, and play basketball. And it was, I'll be honest, it sounds corny, but it was so poetic to me, man. I was 3, 4 years old watching this thing to the point to where my parents, I used to mess the VHS up. It was the tracking button.
Hmm.
I had to use it all the time. And um, I just used to watch the movie
Yeah.
probably 2, 3 times a week and just mimic the moves in slow motion. And I remember the sound of the ball in slow motion in one of the scenes. I was like, man, I want to do that. I want my ball
Yeah.
to sound like that when it bounced. And I fell in love with the game, and my brother and my dad, they started helping me get better at it. And just once they saw, I had
Hmm.
a little bit of a gift, and they saw the height coming. I'm 6'8", so they
Yeah.
saw me growing a little
That's all.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they said, all right, let's do something with this. You know what I mean? And they, I just started
Dang, that's
training like
awesome.
crazy.
So my guess is like at that level, you probably didn't have much distraction, right? Because we didn't have social media back then. You obviously didn't have a whole lot going on. You were able to allocate. I want to have. What's
Exactly.
your take on the difference between kids now and that back then in terms of like their ability to be great at the sport? I have my own take on it, but I think that a lot of these kids, man, we got to force the
Hmm.
butts outside to go do stuff, and they're competing with kids that came
Hmm.
from like your
Yep.
place, like your world, like they ain't got nothing else but the game.
Exactly.
What do you like? What's your, I guess, your thoughts on that area?
My thoughts on it, I
Yeah.
have heavy thoughts on it. Exactly what you said. The kids have to be forced out nowadays to get the
Yeah.
tablet out of their hands, to get their own phones out of their hands. Yeah, again, as they all say, get
Mhm.
to lessen the screen time nowadays. The only screen we had was a TV screen
Yeah.
back in the day. You couldn't always watch it, and we enjoyed going outside back then.
That
It
was
was
the
the
fun.
only that was the fun. You play with the kids in the neighborhood. You find a yard or
Mhm.
a playground to play in. But now everything is so
Yeah.
convenient for the kids. And I'll be honest, my son included, to where I take away
Mhm.
conveniences on purpose.
Same way.
I'm like, nope,
Mm.
put that down. Going outside, and I don't want to have to try to make them relive my childhood because I
True.
don't want that exactly. But there's so many conveniences that, you know, makes them, I don't want to say soft.
I would say
That's not the
to
right
an
word to
extent.
say. Right, right, all right, yeah. I'm
Hey, I'm
trying to be kind there, But yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it makes them soft, And I tell that to my athletes, like
True.
you soft, this that. But it's so many of the conveniences make the technologies
Yeah.
makes it softens up the kid, and when they're faced with a certain difficulty in real life outside of a certain activity, it's hard for them to manage, which is
Uh-huh.
why so much anxiety exists and all these
No,
things.
we were.
So
It is
it's
100%.
such
You're
a
talking
different
my
time,
language.
man.
It's funny as I'm in the same boat. Like I'll tell my boys, like my boys, I got a 17-year-old son heading off to college here. This year, and like he's a track athlete,
That's
but
awesome.
like football wise, like when I played football, it's different. Like it's a different grid. And I tell my youngest son, like I think there's just a
Yeah.
desire for indulgence for kids, and they can get it now. They can find ways to do everything that's easy. Our brain
Mhm.
seeks the
Of course.
desirable comfort space, and yeah, I think nowadays kids aren't developing the grit, and I think it's showing. they're the generations like the world who everybody, no one can feel bad. Don't hurt anybody's feelings. And I'm like, nah, sometimes you gotta have your feelings
Right,
hurt,
right,
man, because
right,
that just means like you're not good enough, and that's okay
yep,
to not be good enough now. But if I don't let you know that, what makes you great enough for later
right,
when life comes and knocks you down, when you have vastly more responsibilities than you had when you were 15, 14, 13. Like now you got a family, you got kids, you got a job, and you shut
yep,
down because Susan said something on text message. Like, come on now. Like we got to figure
right.
it's a different world.
Completely agree, man. I literally 1,000%, agree. It's so many of the things that you cannot reveal or relay to children nowadays.
Yep.
It prevents them, like you said, from learning practices and
Yep.
principles for later on in life. It's really got to watch your words, your tone, your
Everything's
pitch,
different.
your everything. When when so much is still done out of love, but you
It's
just got
true.
to
I
be
got a
more
buddy
careful
who actually
nowadays.
was at Oregon for a lot of years, and then at one point he ended up, and he's actually D coordinator over in Nevada. And he was talking to me about good guy. This is nothing
Okay.
bad, but he's like, it's different. The way that he said the way that the coaches used to talk to us when we were in college is like I could never do it to the kids now. Like I could
Mm.
never. He's like,
Oh no,
it's
no,
just
no,
different, right?
absolutely
Man, it's
not,
crazy. We could probably talk about that all day
absolutely
long.
not.
So you
Mhm.
dip into basketball, you start doing well. What does the journey look like
Mhm.
of your life? Let's say leading up through, let's say before you're at the level of kids and everything right now. Like, what was the next stages? Like, how did you get out of that area?
Out of basketball, well, out of being on the court, competing, professionally, that was it was a journey in itself. I always had
Mhm.
an entrepreneurial bug in me. I'm talking about from childhood to where I would create. I
Yeah.
created my own board game, and funny thing is, I was on an interview the other day, and they asked me like, well, what kind of things did you create as a child? I
Mhm.
said, I'm pretty creative. I let them know the board game that I created just came out. I did it in 1996
Wow.
when I was 11 years old. The board game Monopoly just bought the board game out.
Yeah.
It's not under me, but the exact same format. I went ahead and sent them the images, offline of the new game right next to my
Yeah.
game, almost identical. So I made a basketball game, and just like Monopoly, but each block was a
Ah.
team, an NBA team. I was a pretty good artist, and I drew the logo for
Yeah.
every team on each block. You landed on some foul shots, you go, and I made a catapult
Oh,
system
that's
so we can
cool.
make the basket, stuff like that. And it was such a dope game. Me and my brother used to play it. I
Yeah.
made it, just for around the house. And I think only one time they said you should take it to like Mattel, show somebody. I'm like, nah, this is my game.
Right.
This is my. I wasn't thinking with
Yeah.
the right mindset at the time. But Monopoly just made it for Space Jam and LeBron James when that came out. And my son saw it. He said, "That looks like your game that you made when you was little." Dad. I'm like, "That is the
Uh,
game. We bought it. It was like amazing." But yeah, so I always had this
so
entrepreneurial
is that how
bug
you
in
got
me.
out of like how'd you
And
get
when I
out of
was
the
in
Philly
Europe,
area? Like, is that because that was that part of it? Like the hustle, like the internal like drive there?
no question, man. It's funny. I would come home.
Yeah. Qualifying.
About the recruiting process, obviously. So when I was being recruited in high school, I get mail sent to the house,
Mhm.
things like that, calls to the house, and I would come home sometimes and just put something in the kitchen trash can and see
Hmm.
some of my letters tore up. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? So I would see either from, West Point or Navy, those would be tore up. Some of the Philly schools tore up. I'm like, what's going on? So I remember one time I went to the stairs and yelled upstairs, who
Mhm.
tore up my letters like that? And my brother yelled down the stairs, I did. And I'm like, what's going on? He said, you're not going to school here. You got to get out of here. And you're not going into the army. So I'm like, wow. So
Mhm.
he was in the army, by the
Yeah.
way. He did 2 tours in Iraq, and did everything to make sure I was protected. This is, by this time, I think my older brother, he had died
Yeah.
a couple months before this point. And so my other brother was like, you're getting out of here. Your friends are getting in trouble. A couple of my friends have already gotten,
Yeah.
shot and stuff like that. You're not staying home, Joe. You're not staying here. So I'm like, come on, man. Don't tear up my letters, though. I
Yeah.
want to see what the coach is telling me. But that was a part of the drive. I wanted to make sure that wherever I went, you know, I I wanted to make sure I was good enough to get out of the city. Put it like that. Like if I wasn't good enough, then I would have had to go to community
Mhm.
college in the city. But I'm like, nah, I'm going
Yeah.
D1 somewhere that's not even in the state. So that
Yeah.
was
Get out of
definitely
the
part of
area. I
my
dig
goal,
it,
my
man. You
drive,
kind of
man.
want to, especially when you got a lot of like
I had
that
to get
going
out.
on. It's like the underbelly. I think it'll pull you, man. When you're too
Yeah,
close to stuff that you don't need to be around, man. When you
mhm,
start climbing the totem pole, the rest of the tribe can
yeah,
see you and they want to pull you down, or they want to find a way to get up there with you. And either way, it don't help you. You know what I'm saying? So where'd you end up
unfortunately,
going to college? What was the next stage? Like, where'd
unfortunately,
you
man.
go? What was that playing? Like, what was that whole, I guess, that college experience like?
Dude, we would need
Yeah,
probably two
Uncle
episodes to discuss that. I'll say that as a total, I went
Wow,
to 14 different schools from
really?
kindergarten to college, and my
Mm,
parents weren't in the military,
yeah.
so not a military brat. But I went to 14 different schools. Just one of my brothers, he would get in trouble a lot of times and got kicked out of multiple schools. I had to follow
Hmm.
him each time because I was the youngest, and just other
Wow.
situations. I went to military school. It was a journey, man. After my freshman year of college, I tore my hamstring. I went to school in New York, Siena, D1 in New York, and tore my hamstring. Had to sit out,
Yeah.
the whole red shirt process. And the next year, I wanted to play, but it was situations going on. Five of the guys left from the team. I ended up transferring at the same time. NCAA said, "Look, if you transfer
Gotcha.
to another D1,
Hmm.
you have to sit out. That's just the rule." So you know that. And I said, "Well, I just sat out due to injury." They said, "Well, all you can do is transfer into junior college
Hmm.
rankings, and you can play that way and do a two. They call it a 4-2-4 transfer, 4-year
Yeah.
institution to a 2-year, back to a 4-year." I
Yeah.
said, "Sign me up. I just want to play." And I transferred to a school in Texas called Paris
Hmm.
Junior College in Paris, Texas, and
Oh,
won a
really?
national
That's dope.
championship down there. And yeah, it was it was a blessing in disguise. So wanted to be
Mhm.
back closer to home by this point. I still had another year to do in a 2-year institution, so I came up to a school in Maryland
Okay.
called Cecil Community College and won another national championship. And I didn't find out till probably about 6 years ago that I was like one of four people to ever win back to back,
Really?
but at two different
That's dope.
schools. And then yeah, it was a cool process, man. And then from there, I
Mhm.
was able to get back to Division 1, which is Rider University in New Jersey, and won my senior
Yeah.
year, won a conference championship. So went to four different schools,
That's
man, but got
big.
three different
That's big,
championships
and then
out
the
of it.
progression goes on, man. So that's, I mean, that's one.
Yeah.
I definitely want to extract some things out of that, but I want to get through. We'll call it the athletic endeavors before we kind of venture in, because I realize, for me, I know there's a ton of gold when it comes to post athletic career if you do what I'm pretty sure you did. But before we get there, what was
Absolutely.
it post college? Like, what was the next journey? Obviously, you moved and traveled abroad. Like, how did that kind of enter into the picture? Not like the NBA.
Right. I mean, so yeah, the fact that I didn't get drafted and picked up, I had some feelers and things, but I wasn't,
Hmm.
on any draft boards. So I had to go by way of the workouts, the tryouts, the grind, the behind the scenes stuff
Hmm.
that no one ever sees. Just to get a tryout, to get a workout, and I knew and worked out with guys from the Sixers and stuff like that. So I would still get my grind in and be able to be seen, but being seen is not the same
Hmm.
as getting a contract. So going over to Europe, that was a part of the whole process, and I was fine with it. It was fun. I'd never been outside of the country until that
Yeah.
point, so I embraced it. Being able to go abroad a little bit and see the world and just experience basketball on a different level. It was different. It was highly competitive, and they played differently over there. They played on the ground, which I never really experienced as far as the
Hmm.
footwork. The footwork was amazing over there. And we call things like the Euro step. We have a
It's
term for
different.
them over here, but before that term came over here, I saw it in action on the daily basis. I'm like, how did he just get around me? I'm more
Yeah.
athletic than he is. I'm just as fast, you know. But
Hmm.
they knew how to play on the ground, and it was a heck of an experience, man. So
Gotcha.
it was a lot of
So
fun
what?
though, a
I guess
ton of
what was
fun.
the journey of that? And I guess essentially, like, when did that end? Like, what was the point at which that concluded?
So once it began to end as I began coming up with
Uh,
business ideas and things like that, and I was
okay.
getting married at the same time. So I said, all right, I knew my fiance at the time, she was back here, teaching. I was like, I don't want her to have to follow me everywhere. So I said, I do have this business idea. Let me see if that can work. If I can domesticate myself a
Mhm.
little bit and sit still, let's see if it can work out. And so I came back, and I'll be
Mhm.
honest, man, I went through depression. Not being
Yeah.
able to play ball anymore. I was so so used to competing and just having a certain level of rush. I didn't get it anymore. I started feeling anxiety for the first time in my life. I didn't know what was happening with me. I went to the doctor and was saying, "Hey, what's this feeling I feel in my
Yeah.
throat? Like I feel like it's a lump." And I'm telling him other things that's happening. He laughed at me. He said, "You have anxiety,
Interesting.
man." You know, I said, "No, not me. No, I have a good handle on life. I can handle things. I've handled worse than whatever I'm going through." He said, "No." He said, "You have anxiety," and I had to start just really being at peace with what I was doing and pursuing. And I was still teeter tottering, with my agent, like I may
Mhm.
take a new deal, stuff like that. Um, the marriage was getting rocky. It was a whole lot of stuff, and she didn't understand my depression because I'm like, trust me, I did something for over 20 years of my life, and to just
Tough.
step away from it sacrificially, I'm like, this is tough for me. And so many things was going on. I became a
Yeah.
temp in a call center. Um, I began interning at different places, not making a
Yeah.
dollar, not making a quarter. And I went into education for 4 years, being a teacher's assistant, all the while building up my business on the side around the country. A lot of people that had no clue while I was being a teacher's aide. My company grew into six states, and then 10 states, and then
Mhm.
13 states, and it was just growing. And fortunately, I stuck with it to where we just expanded
What's the
abroad, even
company? I don't
internationally.
even know what it
So it
is
was, it
actually.
was yeah. So the company is pro
Gotcha.
level training, and we just began just just training kids 1-on-1 and 2-on-2
Mhm.
small group things like that, and then it caught on, and we partnered with
Mhm.
Nike Sports Camps, and they caught wind of what we were doing. They loved the way I ran our programs as far as doing a ton of. I'll be honest, you can appreciate this, but I love football. I played football in high school, so football, track, and basketball.
I
Those are my
got you.
three sports. I'm a
My whole
track
family
head.
runs
I'm
track,
a
so I
track
get it.
and
My
field
son's
fiend.
for track. Yeah.
Get out of here. That's my love. So, I incorporated a ton of the different training I picked up on over the years, infused it with our basketball training, and so Nike they appreciated what we had going on, and we just began expanding this brand into
Mhm.
different cities, different states, and I leveraged every connection I had around the country, and helped
Yeah.
kind of rinse and repeat what I had going on here. And I did it elsewhere, and just
What are some of the
expanded
roadblocks you ran
what
into
we
that
do.
most people wouldn't notice? There's always those things where it's, I just expanded and I did this, and I'm fully aware there's going to be definitely things like you ran into that most people be like, I can't do it, because there's that language of can or it's too hard. And I have a feeling this is where I want to kind of circle back to is I got a feeling that what you did or how you grew up or how you showed up in athletics, it's got to have carried over into the way you run the
Mhm.
business.
Absolutely. And again, it's me as far as business and personal, it intertwined many times. So, like on the personal side, I was going through, like I brought it up earlier, and I don't mind
Mhm.
mentioning it, a failing marriage, early on, and that was a struggle. It was just trying to balance different things, fighting for it as hard as I could, and just making sure it was working out, and the other parties that didn't want it, and I'm like, okay, I got to stay focused to make sure this side of life at least keeps moving forward.
Yeah.
We got a son and stuff like that. And so dealing with what I've dealt with early on in life, it applied here. I'm like, you know what? I've had to go through that, but still keep doing this in, on the other side of things to where I can't let
Mhm.
that shut me down completely. And that was one of the main struggles as far as still being balanced on this side while this side is just
Get it.
completely just shaky.
Yeah.
And that was a
I know, man.
struggle. It was a
I know
struggle.
it intimate, and
But
the
mm,
crazy thing is we haven't communicated prior to this, but I got a feeling that we gotta talk more afterwards. No, but
right,
I
right.
came out of the NFL, lost a
Mm,
career, had no idea who I was, big identity issue, was like suicidal at one point. Like
mm,
this whole life thing sucks post game. But I was
absolutely.
married to high school sweetheart, had
Mm,
3 kids, one was in college, two more after, had a gym business I was running, and 9 months in, everything's going
wow.
crazy. Marriage falls apart, and everything is suck. And I'm like, it was interesting when that was all going on, and maybe you can agree with this, but I would go and have to be the joyful, happy coach when I had no happiness inside. It was like,
Man, look. There's a pivotal moment I remember for me. A good friend of mine, he was one of my Nike camp coaches who I brought on board one year, and I didn't realize it, but one morning, I went through some situations at home like the night before and that morning, and like with my ex-wife, and I'm warming the kids up, warming them up, doing what I normally do, but apparently I was going a little hard at them. I didn't realize it, but he said something. He pulled me aside, and again, we're close enough to where he can like pull me aside, like really pull me aside. He said, "What's going on, man? What's going on with you?" He took me out of the gym. We put somebody else over the warm ups. He pulled me outside. It's like, yo, what's going on? Just had his arm around me. And I said, look, man, I said, things not good. And he said, I can tell. He said, man, you're not yourself completely. I was trying to be. And I had an amazing face I could put on at all times. But that day, it came through the surface. And he said, look, man, he said, you got to do your best not to show it. And we talked out there for about 10, 12 minutes while camp was going on. And we had a coach to start the camp up. That was the toughest thing for me at the time. Trying to really make sure, again, things outside of that were still functioning and operating, and people didn't see me in that way because I didn't want it to be seen. Again, you mentioned identity crisis. That's how I felt like I had no clue who I was at one point, because I'm like, man, I'm so strong. I've always been this strong, athletic person. I've been a strong athlete, and this was another animal. Life was just, the other side of life. It came out of nowhere. But yeah, it was a tough situation, man. Trying to really show to yourself to be okay outside of what was going on.
I was in a place where I didn't want anybody to know about it, because like that pride, that ego, that I'm the athlete, they're all, and like I don't want anybody to chink in the armor, and then it creates that pressure inside that doesn't go anywhere, and it just gets darker. And I remember like my big thing was like cathartically, like you just did, like letting it out and talking. But in doing so, like I found that, which obviously I'm assuming in some way leads to what you do now, because I look at the whole story, like we'll call it 50,000 foot view, and I go, okay, this guy went through hardship as a kid. It was a troublesome situation there. Then he progressed through. He had lost someone in life. It's a big piece. Then you go to college and you go, you bounce around, you build a business. You've gone through it. And what I'm hearing is a moment when everybody else, like let's say 99% of the population, that's all going on, they shut down. They don't show up to camp. They don't come in that day.
Yeah.
They make an excuse. And I think that's what people don't grasp, is the separation between those who are successful and those who are not. Like those are odd shift moments. When everybody else would instinctually walk away, you instinctually dive back into where someone has to say, hey, man, take some time. So now in what you do when you go walk and talk and share your message outside of the next level training business, when you speak and coach, what is kind of the premise of the conversation? I'm assuming it has to come out of that, but like I don't want to put it in my own words. What do you go and talk about?
So, I mean, I've done a number of keynotes on goals, as far as reaching your goals and attaining your goals. And, as I'm speaking, I speak on a whole lot of despite what's happening, despite what's occurring, despite what's in front of you, and just really realizing that there's so much opportunity, even within those quote unquote negative situations. And, I've kind of coined the term and tell people all the time, there's so many camouflage opportunities out there, to where if you just really lean into those situations, don't try to ignore them or don't try to hide them, don't sweep them under the rug. You'll end up tripping over that same rug you swept everything under. Like really lean into those things and question those situations. And it's a method I kind of developed for myself called filtering, which is just a way I've been speaking on it probably for the past 7 years or so. Just how I extract exactly what I need from my situations to fuel me even more. So like if it's a bad situation I'm going through, I take that situation and apply it to my process moving forward. Like I want that difficulty to fuel me even more. And it's a part of, like, I had a conversation with Kobe Bryant for about a half hour one day, fortunately, and I never forget one of the things he told me sounded crazy. I didn't understand it fully at the time, but he told me, you got to be willing to see black. And, I'm like, what is this dude talking about? And he repeated, that maybe one other time. He repeated some other things about 5 or 6 other times, I felt like. But I get it now, to where it's like, look, man, whatever you're going through, whatever you're going after, you got to be willing to tap out. Like, you got to be willing to go so hard to where you're willing to reach your threshold, your true threshold. Like, if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to get the absolute max out of yourself. And so for me, I'm like, if anything difficult occurs, all right, cool, give me that. Give me a little bit more of it. That obstacle becomes literally the thing that that pushes me forward. And so, I've been having people tell me for years, you
Yeah.
got to write a book, write a book, write a book. I'm like, it's not my thing. I'm not a writer.
Hmm.
I love to speak, and I finally began doing it, man. I literally just finished my
Nice.
first book called Filtering because it just, it became so natural as far as the process that and the method that I use. I tell people all the time, like you said, like what's the underlying? Don't give yourself too many options. Give yourself like, in some situations, you only
Yeah.
need to have one option. And it's another method I developed for myself, just a practice called a now
Hmm.
method, no other way. So I'm like, if I'm involved in something, if I have too many options, that
Yeah.
means I have an out. I don't want an out. I have to move
Hmm.
forward or I got to move
I
forward.
dig it.
Like, this
Well,
is
I
what it
just
boils
started
down
talking to
to.
somebody today. No, it was a comment. Someone came and commented on the post and they said, "Hey, Anthony, do you believe in a plan A, B, and C?" And I was like, "No, actually, my gut says I believe in plan A, but I just adjust. Like I'm like I adjust. I need. I don't because if I'm giving energy
There
to a
you go.
separate plan, I'm taking energy from this. Like if I have two ladies or three ladies, I can't give lady A all
Sure.
my love, right? So
Mhm.
I can adjust and adapt to make this
Exactly.
love work. So I think there's yeah,
Mhm.
what I'm hearing in that same thing is like that you can't
Exactly.
give yourself the burn the bridges concept. Like I'm gonna go in and but see, and there's I
Exactly.
would love because I
Exactly.
hear that and my gut, dude, I get it. Like I lived this,
Mhm.
I fully understand. There's this commitment to
Mhm.
like
Right,
I
right.
watched what is it, Stylebender, Usman, Usman, I can't think of his name. He's a
Yeah.
UFC fighter, and there's a point in one of the fights
Mhm.
where he says you can see it in his face. He's looking at the person. He says, "I'm willing to die in here. Like I'm ready to die." Like he had this man. He was ready. He was about
Mhm.
to see black, is what I guess you say. Cole would say. And it's like that's the
Yeah.
mentality that people
Mhm.
need. And it's something where you develop it. And now you've developed this through life experience, but I don't think everybody has to go through that
Yeah.
to learn that. So like what are some of the big
Right.
things that you would say you live by? Let's see, I get the filter method, now method. Like try to think to some of the moments maybe. And it's not always hard or easy for us because we just live them instinctually now. What are some of the things that you naturally do in hard
Mhm.
times, like with the marriage, right? That fell apart. You said you had divorce. Like what are some of the things that you
Mhm.
apply in real time, just instinctually, maybe that people can get benefit from?
I mean, I literally just make sure I take another step. Like that's the main thing I
Mhm.
make sure I do no matter what. I make sure my movement doesn't stop. So it doesn't mean that I can't vent. It doesn't mean that I can't cry. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that I can't express myself. But
Yeah.
while I'm doing that, I'm moving. That's one thing I didn't always do, and it would limit me from time to time because when I vented,
Mhm.
I sat still to vent, and I mean for days. When I, felt when I was in my feelings, I was in it for days. But now, allowing myself to still feel things and be human, I'm making sure my movement is still progressing forward no matter what. And I'm doing now what I didn't used to do in the past. I
That's
question
great.
what I'm going through,
Explain that.
and beyond
Expand
that,
on
I
that.
express it
Question
to
what I'm
other
going through.
people.
That's actually, I think, that's a good one. I would love you to go a little deeper in there.
So, by that, I mean, literally, I try to
Yeah.
figure out why this thing came. What's going on here? It's an example I wrote on before as far as I liken pain
Mhm.
to being an actual person and just showing up at your door. And, you don't know this pain, you don't know pain, you don't know who they are, but
Mhm.
there's like an unwelcome guest and they just want to stay, they want to stick around and they just invite themselves in and you're trying to get rid of them and they end up just they bug you so much where they end up sticking around for a little bit longer than
Yeah.
you anticipated and you wanted to. And you just every day get out of here, get out of my house, you're telling pain to get out of here. They're resisting, but one day you
Yeah.
finally they get up and they just leave. And I think a mistake that we all will make in that situation is we never found
Mhm.
out why they came in the first place. You know what I mean? We were so it was such a painful experience having pain around. We just wanted it to be out of here. We wanted to go. We wanted to leave.
Yeah.
But it came for a reason. So many situations happen to us,
Mhm.
and they hurt. They're painful. They're tough to handle. So we just want to get rid of them without questioning why did it come in the first place? Why are you here? And it's a daring thing to do because a lot of times people know if they question things, they may
Mhm.
find out about their shortcomings, their insecurities.
Yeah.
They feel exposed, and I don't care about that anymore. Look, I know by this point I've had so many insecurities. I now know how to
Mhm.
handle them to the best of my ability, and that comes by way of being transparent and expressing
Yeah.
my insecurities to other people. All of a sudden, I realize they say, "Oh, I've been through that too." I'm like, "Okay,
Hmm.
all right, cool. I feel more secure now."
Sure.
So just by questioning my situations and leaning into them as opposed to trying to run away from them, it really helps me to just
Yeah, it's almost like when you
keep
said the
moving
person,
forward.
I'm like, it's almost like pain broke in the house, and then they, they got in somehow. They're here. I get them out, but I ever check to make sure that someone can't get in the same way. Because like I think of it that way, like relationships. If I don't
Exactly,
change the
exactly,
locks, I go through the pain of changing the locks. Man, they might have a key and they keep coming back in. Same date, same girl,
exactly.
same business issues, same
Yep,
friendship issues. So, think yeah, I like that,
yep,
man. It's a pretty good metaphor going back and unpacking that thing. So, in the world of what you're doing now, man, what's I
yeah,
guess the bigger picture? Because there's always going to be a progression toward where we're moving towards. And I like for people to sometimes hear like
absolutely.
where a person who is where you're at, doing what you're doing, like what do you aspire to do?
Mhm.
Here's a good way for a minute. What is
My
something you
my
want to be
spot,
remembered for doing you're not yet doing? Yeah.
just overall impact, man. Just impact, by way of my experiences. Honestly, and that's what I've been stepping into more than anything else. Obviously, building up, being a CEO of a sports training
Mhm,
company. That's cute in my eyes. It's nice. It's working out really well, and
mhm.
it's a passion of mine, of course. However, I feel like my true purpose is just having impact and helping to change lives. Mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally, physiologically. To where I've been through so much physiological stress and depression over my course of my life, to where I allowed this to affect this in my body. The fact that I overcame that, I know
Mhm,
I didn't go through it for me. I went through so many things I've gone through, and I'm realizing now it's for everybody else that I can come in touch with,
mhm.
in contact with. Um, so my overall goal and purpose is to really provide as much impact as
Yeah.
possible and change some minds and change some lives in the process, by
Yeah,
way
I
of my
dig it. And I do
experiences,
know
man.
there's a different journey for us because I'm a former NFL linebacker. It's the alpha mentality. You're right. You're
Mhm.
6'A", big black dude, right? We
Exactly.
aren't expected to talk about our feelings. We're not
Exactly.
expected to be open and clear.
No.
It's an interesting, but I
Absolutely
find that
not.
there's a lot of power in it.
Mhm.
I probably get a lot more DMs from other black men about the fact they feel, they're thankful I shared this thing. And it's odd. Like, why do we live in a society where everybody knows that that's not what we should be doing is bottling things up, yet we bottle it up and no one opens up and shares. Like, what are your
Yep.
thoughts on maybe what was your journey doing that? Was it easy to eventually open up, or was it something you had to battle through? Do you have trouble still sharing certain things?
It wasn't easy. No, it definitely wasn't easy. I would be a liar if I
Yeah.
said, "Oh, yeah, it was a piece of cake." No, it took years for me to open up, man. It took years of even people asking me, "How you doing? Things all right?" And me saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm cool." It was a whole lot of that. Yeah, I'm cool going on.
Right.
Family. How's things going? I'm cool. I'm good. And they know. Those are the closest to
Yeah.
knows when it's
Hmm.
something going on, and it didn't really start to click for me to open up until, like, my brother, me and him, we talk about everything. Like, literally, like, if there's anything going on within us, we talk about. And talking about things with him,
Hmm.
that helped a whole lot, just to get it out of my system, just to kind of voice whatever I was going through, and him give me advice on my situations allowed me to see, okay, number one, what I'm going through is
Yeah.
normal. It's okay. I'm human. But I always saw myself as superhuman a little bit. Just again, you get it. That whole alpha male mentality. You're so hyped up by your crowd and your surrounding, friends. You feel like you have an
Yeah.
aura about yourself. To where you're not allowed to express yourself. But the moment I began doing it with him, I started expressing myself from the stage. I was on stage one time, and I've
Mhm.
never cried in public, ever. I feel like outside of a victory, maybe on a basketball court, to where I'm telling a story of something. It was a keynote I had at Cheney University, and I don't think many people knew that this happened. But I was telling a story, and
Mhm.
I began tearing up. And for me, it was so therapeutic to where I
Yeah.
said, I
Yeah.
got to do this again. I have to keep talking about my life because I felt freed
Yeah.
after I did that. So it was therapeutic for me, but also so helpful for other people. I said, this is my purpose. I literally have to do this.
Yeah,
If I
I
don't do
dig
it, I'm
it.
not
That's a
fulfilled.
big, big, big thing that people don't understand. It's like getting the things out. They help both people,
Mhm.
like you and the person told. And it doesn't mean that somebody has to go on a stage and share their whole story. There's things in your own home, your own house, or your own
Right,
family.
right.
I
Mm-hmm.
find that there's a lot of things that happen in society that people are ashamed of, so they don't say anything about it, even other people closest to them. And they then watch
Right.
other people close to them walk through the same fire and never go and try to put it out. It's like, man, if you
Mm-hmm.
just opened up a little bit to that
Exactly.
person privately and let them know they're not alone, or you did go through this, like it could be very helpful for a
Right.
lot of humans. So I think there is a lesson in just, yeah,
Big
just
time.
sharing it, even if it's just one person, not the whole entire world.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, man. That's what it's all about for me, man. I share everything too nowadays. It's once I saw how therapeutic it was for me,
Yeah.
selfishly, I said I'm gonna keep doing this. Because it's I see if I
Hmm.
feel good doing it, and also I'll be honest, I know if I'm able to feel good just as one person, I'm then helping 1,000 people at one time. By helping them, giving them some tips, some tricks on not just the emotional side, but side, business. I do a lot of business talks and things like that. So talking to entrepreneurs, letting them know how I did X, Y, Z, and so you even see back here like being the face of Cheez-Its crackers, like
Right.
random things that I did. People always ask, "How did you do this? How did you do that?"
Yeah.
Here's how I did it. I just don't mind talking about
Mm.
any and everything now. I'm like, if I can help a soul,
I like
I
it,
feel
man. We
amazing
need
doing
more
it.
of that
So,
in the world. Not that we don't have enough people, but we definitely could always use more, man. Dart, this is great, man. It's really been a fun conversation getting to know you. I'm glad I didn't know all the things about
great
you
con-
beforehand because I got to learn in real time. And I'm sure there's a whole lot more we didn't even get to. But if people want to go and uncover
oh
more
yeah,
of
yeah,
that, where would I
pleasure.
send them?
A couple different places. I'm on IG, on Instagram. I'm super,
Mm-hmm.
active on Instagram at J Green PLT. That's JAY
Mm-hmm.
Green PLT, or joelbgreen.com. So people will be able to, see me on there. Different things I have coming
Yeah.
up. Again, I mentioned the book.
Cool.
That's going to be released in the fall, but pre-orders will be up soon. Things like that. But those are the two
Nice, man.
platforms
All
I'm
right.
on the
Final
most.
question. You ready for it? Here it goes. What
Let's
promise
go.
did God make to the world when he created you?
Oh man, that's an amazing question. That the world would be
It's
better
a
when
good
I
one.
leave.
It's a good, simple, clean, precise. I like it. I like it, man. I mean, it's kind of the goal, right? We can only be, I mean, who we are here now, and the best thing we can do, I think, at the end of the day, is just be the fullest of us. And I find we're always someone to someone, and you're doing it
Yep,
to someone, to a bunch of kids, to a bunch of people at an organization. You're covering a large base of humans, and so I believe not only is it a good calling, but it's actually what you're
I'm
doing. So
trying.
thank you, man. Those of you guys, oh man,
I really
seriously,
appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to having another conversation. I don't know when or how or where we're gonna make that happen. I'll have to look up to you. I'm only
Sure,
6'1", but we'll make it work.
sure.
Yeah, hey, thank you guys for tuning in and watching and hanging out. However you're consuming this podcast, we appreciate you and your time spent here with us. If this podcast benefited you in any way, if you know someone going through similar battles, or someone who's an athlete talking about, like, I don't know how to get through this transition, or they grew up in a crazy childhood, don't know how to come out of that, whatever it is they're battling that you believe this can help them with, please share the episode with them. Outside of that, share it into its regular feed too. Put it somewhere where people can just kind of see it, grab it. You never know who's out there watching. You can grab it and check it out. Because shoot, I don't even know how we got this man on the podcast today, but hey, the world
Yeah,
works
right.
in
I
amazing
snuck on
ways.
here, right?
Thank
Exactly.
you again, man. Any part words you're welcome to share with the audience too.
Nah, that's everybody just literally keep moving forward. We're not no matter what you're going through, good or bad. Don't rely too much on the good. Don't be held back by
I
the
dig it. I
bad.
dig
Just
it. All
keep
right.
moving
That's
forward.
it. Thank you guys so much. And as always, make the most of your off shift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks and Joel Green signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Oz Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love if you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.